want to welcome all of you here. This is exciting for me. This is exciting for me because Marshall's right. Watching what you've seen of the leadership team up here, it is encouraging. I feel like we're passing the mantle to the next generation, and you know, it's kind of like kids and grandkids. We've seen some great growth. But Marshall, in all due respect, part of the thing of it is the legacy we were able to build, they were able to stand on our shoulders, and guys, all of you in this room are going to be able to stand on their shoulders. And there will be people coming after you who will stand on your shoulders. That's why it's so important for you to learn how this thing works. What I wanted to kind of zero in on for you here, how many in the room, I mean, look at this, a pocket of $500,000, 300,000, another half, or 300,000. Look at all these different pockets here. Unbelievable production. You realize this represents $2 million a month in premium. A lot of insurance companies don't write $2 million a month. Sean, could you give me a glass of water? I know I'm going to need it. Now, what does that translate into in the real American economy? That translates into putting $2 million a month in income, in wages, back into the U.S. economy. Because 100% of it goes back to be paid out to you all. Now, the insurance companies aren't stupid. You know, we get the first year premium, they get the profit off of it for the next 20 or 30 years. So this is a very, very workable relationship that we can all benefit from. You asked a question earlier in terms of how does this work? How do you get the emotion going? Let me tell you how the emotion gets going. The first time you pick up the phone and you call somebody and it's too late, or you have an appointment and you get there. This actually happened with me about 8 or 9 years ago. I get to the house and the young lady is a widow. Now, if you've done this very long, when you get your leads, you're going to get a lot of leads that come back that say, you know, spouse deceased. When I was in the field, I might get 2 or 3 a week, but I never had one where the widow was 24 years old. I get to the house and I find out, I sit down, the 3-year-old has got his tennis shoes on, walking around the house in daddy's shoes. He doesn't understand daddy's not coming home. Then I find out the rest of the story. Another agent had had an appointment with her and her husband a month earlier on a Monday night at 6 o'clock. They don't get home from work from DC until 7:30. They took time off from work to come to meet this guy. 6 o'clock, he's not there. 7 o'clock, he's not there. 8 o'clock, he's not there. Finally, at 10 o'clock, they eat dinner and go to bed. They're furious with this guy because he never showed up. That's on Monday night. Wednesday morning, she's at the doctor's office in Stafford, Virginia, and finds out they've been trying to have their second child for the last 18 months. Wednesday morning, at 10 o'clock, she finds out she's pregnant. Calls her husband on his cell phone to give him the good news, and a state trooper answered the phone. He'd just been killed in a car. I'm sitting in the house a month later. Now she's 6 weeks pregnant, no husband, no mortgage protection insurance, no life insurance, and in 6 months, no place to live. So let me tell you something. You do live a life of significance. And every time you pick up that phone, you have a chance to change the trajectory of their life, just like John Ziller's families. Only John Ziller's family went this way, just like hers. So guys, don't take lightly what we do. I want you to understand how big this is, but really, how many of you in the room think you can do that? How many of you in the room think you could ever play golf like Tiger Woods? Your chances of doing this, yeah, one, I don't believe him. Your chances of doing this are about the same as playing golf like Tiger Woods.
You said it right, Dick, like John Ziller.
Don't put your hand at me. Well, I get to thinking I got one fract on Ziller over there. I say this because the reason most of us can't play golf like Tiger Woods is we would not stand at the driving range and hit golf balls long enough to the point that we were good enough that our hands bled. We're just not gonna do it. And for a lot of people in here, that's the same thing here, but I wanna go back. I wanna draw out my beginning of this, because I think it's important for everybody to understand. You're gonna hear me say time and time and time again, you can eat an elephant one bite at a time. And I'm gonna show you right now how you can do this. This is what happened with Dick Sylvester. I took off and started doing this. I was excited. Actually, I wasn't that excited. I just had 6 kids that were hungry all the time. And you know, when you're in that situation, you got to do what you got to do. This is what we were using for leads back in those days. And I would get 10 of these leads a week, and the guy that hired me convinced me that 10 leads was all I needed because that's all they could get. So I did this, and I went out on these appointments, and I started doing about $15,000 a month. Well, that got me to a 70% contract pretty quickly. That's about $10,000 a month in income. I had a grin on my face I couldn't get rid of. And it was such a good deal, I didn't want anybody knowing. People started coming to me, what are you doing? Is this legal? Can I do this? And I said, well, I don't know if you can do it or not. It is legal. So I hired Charlie. And Charlie was doing, I gotta look at my numbers here, because what I've done is I've adjusted it slightly just to show what you can do today, because at that time we had lower mortgages, we didn't have simplified issue, we didn't have return of premium, we didn't have any of this stuff. But at any rate, Charlie started doing, I teased him, I said, I think you're half as good as me. He was really doing about $10,000 a month. Harry, I think Harry was doing about $10,000 a month, and Pam was doing about $5,000, as I recall the way the numbers went. Well, this was my little group that started. Now, why am I showing you this? Because you can eat an elephant one bite at a time, and as you start doing this, if you can come in and you can just build this, then I'm going to show you how it grows, kind of like what happened with Marshall. Well, now I go to 80%, so that takes me 80% of $15,000. Now that takes me to a $12,000 a month income. My grin got bigger. You know, it was even better than it was before. At that point in time, I was making about, I think off of Charlie's business, I think at that point in time I was making about $1,750, and I was making about $1,000 a month off of these guys, $14,750 a month in income. How many people in this room, how would that change your life? Now, there are people in this room that are used to making that, and I know that, but those days are gone, and they know it, and we know it, and they thought they were gone forever. Marshall's one of them. Marshall never dreamt that he would ever recreate the good old days, and he's glad now the good old days are gone, because this is a whole lot better than the good old days were. You know, the older we get, the better we were. And you haven't got that, Marshall. You know, that's what this is all about. This is to restore the green back in your life. Now, I don't know how many of you really believe that you can do this. I mean, really. How many of you think you might want to buy 3 running buddies and do this? See, this is where it really gets serious, because you know what happens when you get to this point? At this point, it's you doing all the work. But when you get to this point, it's you doing a little less of the work, it's Charlie doing a little work, it's Harry doing a little work, and it's Pam doing a little work, and oh my gosh, this starts to emerge. Now, what I want to cover with you today, I want to build this in such a way that you can see you doing it. And the reason I do that, people say, well, Dick, your picture's not as big as maybe what Symmetry talks about or Marshall talks about. No, it is. I just want to get you started and let it grow, because this gets organic. And what happens is you do this, you start, and then it starts getting legs of its own. Now see, you hear us talking all the time. Were you guys readers before you started here? Okay.
I hated it.
I did too. Marshall, I think, the last book he read was at JMU, and he burned it when he got out of school. You know, is that fairly close to accurate? I'm not picking on Marshall because I wasn't any better. You know, I got out of Xavier on an MBA program. My daughter graduated from UVA. She goes, "What? It's 4 years and it's over? No, I want to go back." You know, and went to Duke. I haven't still haven't figured it out now. But at any rate, some of these kids love being in school, love reading books. I'm sure Jacob, he probably just read everything he get his hands on, you know. But that wasn't something that was normal and natural. The reason that's so important for you is with this, you can't get any better than you are today. So we got to change you so that as you grow and you get better, then we have a chance of doing this. Now, what does this all look like to you? I want to show you what managing 50 leads a week looks like. This is where it's serious. Now, leads under management is what dictates what your income is. What do I mean by that? I'm going to use the example of 50 A leads because those numbers are easy for you to relate and equate to. But 50 A leads a week, what that does, that's going to cost, and just so you know, I had my eat my elephant one bite at a time. Guys, this has been my mantra since I was probably 19 years old. I started selling campsites at 19, and I'd have a good week, and I think, wow, I had a good week last week. I wonder if I can do it again. Well, then I'd have another good week, and by the end of the summer, I had a good summer. I remember the first year that I was doing campsites. Now, keep in mind, in the 60s, a family of 4 working in a factory, a man working in the factory was feeding a family of 4 people for $4,800 a year. I went out and sold campsites, and I made $6 grand that summer. And my brother and I had a mowing business. I made another $6,000 off of that. I made $12,000 in the summer. When I graduated with the MBA program, the chairman of the marketing department came to me and he says, "Dick, the last year," he said, "we would like for you to be a TA." And that was a teacher's assistant. He says, "And I'll tell you what, we're paying all your tuition and we're going to give you," I think it was $200 a month stipend. And I said, "Well, Dr. David," I said, "I can't take the pay cut." He said, "What?" He thought this was a phenomenal opportunity. I said, "I can't take the pay cut." He said, "Well, how much money are you making?" I said, "Well, that summer off the mowing business, we expected to make $8,000 a piece," which we did, about $8,600. And I said, "I expect to sell at least another $6,000 in income off of campsites. So probably about $14,000, $15,000 for the summer." He stormed out of the room and never talked to me for 2 months. I was making as much mowing grass and selling campsites as he was making as chairman of the department. And he finally got over it, and we spoke eventually. But my mantra then was, you can eat an elephant one bite at a time. Now, one thing I did not understand, and I want you to understand, is the law of large numbers. When John was talking, making all the dials, that's what this is all about. It's the law of large numbers. You can't beat the numbers, and the numbers can't beat you. If you will put in the activity, you will have to be successful. We had a guy on our call a couple weeks, Andrew Jimenez. Andrew was so bad on the phone, he had to make 750 dials a week. He was terrible. He was worse than terrible. He was awful. But he kept failing and failing and failing to the point that he got good. There's a story in this book, and all of you need to get this. This is probably one of the second best books I've ever read, and I'm only halfway through it. Little Things. Why you should really sweat the small stuff. Those of you that were on our call this week know, how many of you knew that Napoleon won the war? The only way you know that is if you were on our call Tuesday. Napoleon actually won the war at Waterloo. He actually won it. He was an absolute genius. But when he captured the English cannons, what they would do is they would drive a nail in the fire hole of the cannon so it was inoperable. And when they were attacking the cannons, the cannon fires could only fire off 2 rounds and then game over because the cavalry was on top of them. and game was over. They captured the cannons. And then they're running around with the nails. And somebody had forgot to bring the nails. So they captured them. Then what they did is they turned and they went after the rest of the infantry of Wellington's infantry. And while they were there, the English came back and recaptured the cannons, and they were fireable because they didn't have any nails. 156 nails determined the outcome of Waterloo. And Napoleon went down as the worst failure ever, and it destroyed his career. What type of things are we leaving on the table when we go into the house, when we are doing our recruiting? What's our Waterloo? So at any rate, guys, this is a great book, and he's got a couple other stories in here anyway. Now, I want to point out to you what managing 50 leads a week. Now, once you get to the point that you're managing 50 leads a week, you are now at an 80% contract. So we're going to assume, if you've gotten to that point, that you're capable of being taught and trained to do $5,000 a week in premium. That $5,000 a week for you is going to generate $4,000 in income. All right, now to manage 50 leads a week, you're going to need some help. You're going to need 4 or 5 part-time people managing the rest of the leads. So out of the other leads with that, you're going to have 4 agents, and all 4 agents together, let's say they're part-time and we're just beginning, we're going to do $10,000 in premium. You're at an 80, they're at a 60, that's going to give you another $2,000 a week in income. So now, we're up to $6,000 a week. Not bad for a new boy, okay? Now, we got some issues here. Out of that $6,000 a week, we're going to place about 65% of it because you're new. You're still trying to get your legs underneath you. So out of that, that $6,000 a week is $300,000 a year. We're placing 65%. That's going to allow you $3,900 in income because you didn't get all the business placed. You didn't call your mentor. The goal is to get it up to 80%, and I'll tell you what those numbers are in a minute. That's $3,900 a week for 50 weeks. Now, as all of you know that the companies don't give you the 100% of the commission, they give you 75% of it. All right, so 75%, this times that is $195,000 a year in income. How many people's it taken to do this? Anybody? How many people's it taken to do that? 5. 4 new. You think you can find 4 running buddies over the next 12 months that can do this? I hope. Now, out of the $195,000, they're going to give you 75% advance. That's $146,000 in income, and you got $49,000 still coming because the company held some of it back. Now, why do I show you this? Because I don't know if anybody in the room can do this, but I think anybody in the room that puts their mind to it, I think everybody in the room that puts their mind to this can do this. That's why this is so important. Now, once you get to this, we put a cap on you. We stop you. You can't grow anymore. No, we don't. We encourage you. How do we encourage you? By reading books, by going to meetings, doing stuff like this, going to conferences. We are constantly pouring into our people so that they get better and better and better. Now, what happens if you come on board and you do this and you never progress any farther? Kick them out the door. No! We're not kicking anybody out the door. That's a pretty good gig, wouldn't you agree? Of course it is. We would let, now, as a manager, would I like to have 1 or 2 of those at 110% contract? I'd like to have 100 of them, Marshall. I'd like to hire 100 people that never build a thing, get to an 80% contract and stay there, and they're happy as a clam, and I got a grin on my face I can't get rid of them. Because I'm getting 30% of this every week, just helping out. So, see, the thing of it is, we don't have a preconceived idea where we want anybody. We're just laying down the plan and allowing you to plug into and grow. John Maxwell has a concept called the law of the lid. And the lid is just how high you can go. See, some people, and this is true, some people, if you gave them an organization like Marshall's, couldn't manage it. That doesn't make them a bad person. I grew up in the farm country of Ohio. I had kids I went to high school with inherited beautiful farms. But they just didn't have the business mind about them to run it. They just didn't. I remember one of the girls I went to high school with, drop dead gorgeous. And everybody thought, and we found out that she wasn't the top of the class. But you know what she had? She had people skills, the brains dreamt of. She came in, and her father died. She took the business over a fairly young age, and she is still in business. And we were both over 60. I won't say how much, but we're both over 60. Now, what happens if we get this 65% placement rate up to 80? This figure goes to 240,000. This figure goes to 180, and this figure goes to 60. Why wouldn't we do that? That's why you contact your mentor. The mentor is your most important person in your life at this point in time, because they're the ones that are going to help you get where you need to go. Now, why do I get so fired up about this? I received a phone call between Thanksgiving and Christmas this past year. It was a sale that I made 19 years ago. And it was that point in my life that I needed every sale. And I've always approached it every week as if I needed every sale. But at this point, I really needed every sale. This guy was $140. And I would go by the house. He made homemade beef jerky, and I'd go by the house and get some, and he'd always give me more than I asked for. And I thought he liked it. So at any rate, I get this phone call between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and the first words that I quote out of his wife's mouth were, "Dick." She named him by name. "Does my husband still have that policy with you?" I thought that was a bit strange that a wife would ask if her husband still had the policy. I said, "Yes, of course." "Why?" "Well, he passed away last week." 3 weeks later, she gets a check for $160,000. And she calls me, crying. She said, "Dick, I just want you to know a few things." She said, "I took out $160,000. We've got the mortgage now paid down to less than $110,000. I paid the mortgage off." She said, "I paid off the funeral. And I paid off 2 little credit cards." And she said, "And I put over $30,000 in the bank." And then she burst into tears. In between sobs, she's trying to explain to me. She said, "The reason I asked that question, did he still have the policy?" She said, "I think you need to know the rest of the story." She said, "You were the 5th agent that came to see us, and he ran the other 4 off. And I was always afraid he was going to run you off too, but you stuck with us. And because you stayed with us, I'm a widow who is not going to lose my home due to foreclosure in July, like I was always afraid was going to happen. And I have friends that has happened to. You made a difference in our life, and I'll be forever." And she's telling me this through sobs. And it turns out, every time I go by and get some beef jerky, he used to scream at me. I don't know why I like that guy. He comes by, eats all my beef jerky. I have to pay that insurance I know I'm never going to use. And I don't know why I like the guy. So that's why she was so fearful as to whether or not he had kept that policy up. I'm just telling you here today, you have a life today, an opportunity to live a life of significance like no other job you've ever had. And our point here today is, if you will fail long enough, I won't say you can't help but be successful, because, some people couldn't sell guns in a prison riot. Our leads, our selling system, our mentoring can't change that. But oh my gosh, there's so much out there now. If you're one of those people who couldn't sell guns in the prison world, they got books for that. Psychology of Selling by Brian Tracy. Phenomenal book, just on just the concepts in general. But you are in a position today to change the trajectory of your life and leave a legacy for your family like nothing that you've ever experienced before in your life. How do I know that? I am living proof. I grew up in Rainsboro, Ohio. When I left there in the 60s, 70s, they didn't have a traffic light on Route 50 then. For those of you who don't know, Route 50 is one of the few highways in America that runs from Washington, D.C. all the way to the West Coast. It's a big deal, or used to be, for the interstate. And they didn't have a traffic light there when I left, and they still don't have one. So for somebody to come out of Rainsboro, Ohio, and stand in front of you, making a multiple six-figure income, I went out Tuesday, I'll close with this. I went out Tuesday, had a client call me, they just got married. Actually, I met him 4 years ago, and I sat down with him, and I did such a good job when I met her the first time 4 years ago, I wanted to take notes on me. I mean, I thought, man, oh man, I got it, nailed it. No, I don't think so. You know, I check my zipper, make sure it's out. I didn't know what was going on. This is terrible. Anyway, they called me back, and they now have 2 children. And I sat down Tuesday evening, I wrote it up, made $1,000. And I mean, at my age, to be able to go out in full retirement and just make $1,000 just because I want to? No, just because I can.
That's awesome.
I mean, how many of you are faced on living on Social Security right now? And maybe you can plug into this retirement plan the cemetery put together. Maybe you can't. But Lord have mercy to be in a position. Charlie Schoolcraft, the lone guy here on the other page. When I got the phone call that he passed away, he had a stroke about 2 years before he died. He died at 78. And I'd always take him to lunch. We'd go over and just talk and get more stories and everything. If I could get 100 Charlies today, I'd go to the bank and borrow $10,000 and buy them, $10,000 apiece, if they promised they'd work for me for 5 years. And if they didn't, I got all the money back. I would borrow enough money to hire 1,000 of them, 100 of them, whatever it took, I would do it. He was that good. And I would go over there, and Charlie would be sitting at his desk, and he'd be going through his files. He could go up 2, maybe 3 steps. If the house, to go to their house, had more than 3 steps, he would put it in a different pile. And he would sit there and call people, because he wanted to go try to sell them insurance. And when I got the phone call that he passed away, I said Charlie was doing one of 2 things. He was either sitting there reading his Bible, or he had a file in his lap. And when they found him, he had 3 files open on his desk, his Bible on his lap, sitting in his chair. He had a heart attack and died. 78 years old with a stroke and couldn't go up more than 3 steps, and could still go out and make $500 to $1,000 a week in that condition. Guys, I don't know what to say, other than the fact you can eat an elephant 1 bite at a time. Now, when's the best time to start?
Yeah.
Thank you.